Introducing
Pretty Girls Love Real Estate. Stories of everyday women breaking barriers and building wealth through real estate.
Let's get it. Boss. BOSS.
Oh, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Pretty Girls Love Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Washington. Thank you for tuning in this week. And I'm so excited for another week for my guest this week. As I mentioned before, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast, I wanted to definitely showcase different avenues of real estate, especially women of color and, you know, all the amazing things that they're doing outside of the norm. So today's guest is in the corporate housing industry. People know a lot about and have been trying to get more knowledge on Airbnb and VRBO, HomeAway, all these platforms that are designed for short-term rentals. But one thing that is a little bit more obscure and people don't know as much about is the corporate housing industry, which is typically longer-term stays and for business travelers, maybe traveling nurses. So this is I guess a small subset of the short-term rental market. So I'm so excited to have my guest on today. Her name is Nina Taylor, and she's the CEO and founder of The Sweet Faith, which is her own company that she started in the corporate housing industry. So we're going to let her tell us all about that. But I'm so excited and I'm so appreciative for having her on for today. So how you doing, Nina? How you doing today?
I'm good, Jessica. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for taking this time out to talk about this. And I'm so excited because I know you're going to have a lot of great information to share with everybody. And then, as always, we got to talk about our trials and tribulations of being a woman of color in this industry. So I'm excited to get to that conversation for sure. But first of all, just for, people sake, just tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the real estate industry in general.
Sure. So the Sweet Faith has been a journey. So I've been in the industry about 19 and a half years now. I actually started out in property management. So I did that in Dallas, Texas, right after college. So when I was a little girl, I'd always said I wanted to grow up, find people homes, and make them happy. So that was always what I thought was going to be my journey, and that's always been my passion. So it just recently came into where I was just like, not only is that my passion, but my purpose. So at 25, I moved to New York in 2005, and I transferred out of property management to a corporate housing company. And I didn't know much about it, but they took a chance on me, and I really respect and appreciate that. It was through Oakwood Worldwide, which is the #1 global corporate housing firm in the world. And I just kind of slowly worked my way up that corporate ladder, and it just became, okay, what else can I do? And it became certain blocks of, I don't want to just limit myself to just these particular clients or this particular scope of work. So as I was networking throughout New York, because I was there for 13 years, in a networking meeting, someone reached out to me and they were just like, we have this great new development. It was the top real estate firm in New York. And they were just like, we'd love for you to be a part of our lease-up team. So I decided, because the money was amazing, I went over there and started, leasing that stuff up, which was supposed to be a 2-year project. And it turned out to be 11 months that we leased it up so fast. So after that, I then went to some of their other properties around Manhattan, and I helped kind of build up their leasing and make sure that those stay full at a good occupancy. And then from there, I just got antsy and wanted to go back to corporate housing. So then I went over to furnished quarters. Had an amazing boss, Craig Parton, big ups to him. I absolutely love him. He's amazing. And we just kind of grew a sector in that particular company that really didn't have movement, and it was through brokers and realtors. And it was really connecting with them, doing lots of meetings with them, and developing and just coming up with different structure packages that hadn't been created before. And that's where multiple $1-million contracts started kind of, coming out the woodworks of how we can develop and structure something that was new and innovative in a hospitality way. So after a while, I got a little antsy and decided to, of course, buy something. So I moved back to Texas and bought my home in Houston. And it just got to the point where I was kind of at my peak again in my career. And I wanted to take all of the things that I had learned and do it for myself and have a voice for myself and the people that I wanted to serve. So it started out with really assisting faith-based organizations. But it was really my New York clients who were just like, hey, I know you have your own thing, but can you help me? And I was like, why not? Mm-hmm. So it then kind of transformed into really helping executives of minority-owned businesses. And so that's how it's kind of like Sweet Faith is really an intuitive of what I do. Sweets meaning short term, but also faith because how I stepped out on it and how I believe and move, how I should work with my my clients. And so that's how my purpose and passion kind of came together in this industry in a nutshell.
Okay, so that's awesome. So I wanted to know, I know a lot of people are, still getting used to the concept of short-term rentals. So can you just touch on a little bit, what's the difference between a short-term rental and what you do with corporate housing?
Well, it depends on where you are, because each kind of city and state has its own thing. Just like you can be in New York, they have certain requirements of what is required when it comes to short-term housing versus New Jersey. And they also do interchange the terms. So there's, people call it short-term housing, people call it corporate housing, people call it temp housing. In the UK, they call it service departments. So, but again, it's all based off of rules and restrictions and laws of what's required there. So typically a corporate apartment is someone who is actually staying for 30 days or longer. Typically, those corporate contracts are coming from companies who are doing some relocation or they're building in a different place, and they're going to send, a team or a specific person to come out to actually do a particular project. So those can range, from 30 days. It could also go to 90 days. Sometimes, quite a bit of projects, especially if they're relocating, they could do, 6 months, 12 months. It could be, whatever contract kind of fits within those terms of the work requirements. But you can have, because of course, Airbnb has kind of stormed the market and they really took a turn when it came to the hotel industry. But when it came to corporate housing, that's where the laws in New York changed, because we could also assist people for less than 30 days 15 years ago. Now that has changed, it has to be 30 days or longer. So it allows people to really have to figure out based on what they want to do and then where they want to go. So Airbnb is kind of a comfortable situation if you're staying like in Texas, where I am here now. You can stay for a week or 2 weeks, in a fully furnished apartment. It's all service like you would if you walked into, any major hotel. And you have guest services at the tap of a button on your phone. Everything is keyless and, the technology is all there. So it really just depends on where you're going. So that's also why I started my company, because a lot of times I was going to a lot of these broker meetings and many of them really just did not understand how to put those pieces together. And they were running into roadblocks, or they were going into places that legally they didn't know all of the requirements that they shouldn't have. Because that's the one thing, you get caught in going into something that you're not supposed to be staying less than 30 days in. They are required to kick you out, and it becomes a money situation, and that whole thing gets a little scary. So knowing and understanding what corporate housing is and how that can be, situated it's really good to actually have a professional. That's why, it's good when you have a court case, you get a lawyer. It's good to have someone professionally kind of hold your hand and really guide you and kind of let you know, especially when you have a whole bunch of different projects, or if you're even doing it for leisure, which some people don't even know you can do it for leisure, depending on where you go. So that's a nice kind of education that I do for my clients and really help them when it comes to different projects. And also the companies that I used to work for, I now partner with in order to actually help with their services. So it could be that they're staying, it's a whole group of, 10 to 15 people, and I could have, some at Furnished Quarters, some at Synergy, some at Oakwood. and they're all encompassed under my company. So it also really does help to, know the language, understand it, and how to put that package together to make it work, not only for myself, but for my clients.
Now, a couple of those companies that you mentioned, Furnished Quarters, Oakwood is like the OG of corporate housing, and Synergy Worldwide. Since, Airbnb and all these other platforms have become so much popular over the past, I want to say 8 years or so, how do you think that kind of popularity has helped you? And I guess how has it hindered you in your business model? Because, like you said, it's becoming so contentious, and there's so many different jurisdictions that are passing a bunch of new laws and everything restricting it, especially like you said, New York is like one of the most strict in terms of markets that they are really cracking down on short-term rentals. San Francisco is another market where they're really strict. So how has the popularity of Airbnb and short-term rentals helped you and hindered your business model?
Well, when it kind of first started and it really took off and boomed while I was still in corporate America, I will say everyone was trying to do whatever they could to beat them, and circumvent them. But it got to the point after a while, because they had grown so much and the ease of it. And a lot of times corporations were giving lump sums. So people were kind of taking the money and was just like, I can go to an Airbnb and then I can pocket this money. Mm-hmm. So it's about the education. So oftentimes, if it doesn't make sense and it does work out for you to do that, you're supposed to do that. Do it if it makes sense, if that's, what you need to do. But if you really are considering what your desires are as far as what you're requiring at a certain level, which is why I assist executives of minority-owned businesses. They don't necessarily want the cheap fruit out. They want quality, they want service, and they have a certain standard of how they want to travel and live when they're staying, no matter how long it's going to be. So that is part of my job, to make sure those standards and those requirements are met at every single level. So that's why not only do I kind of take care of those services for them and on a hospitality standpoint, but I also make it very kind of a poignant in that partnership that I have with those corporations of how to really assist those clients. And then go, above and beyond those standards of not only making sure that the technology there is there, but, what they need. So, if it's health and wellness, if it's making sure there's a scale in the kitchen, so that they can measure their food with their fitness. If it's certain travel packets, working with certain like providers who do kind of travel kits and stuff. It's little things like that that make all of the difference, that really it's not about the price anymore, but it's about the service. So that's where I say that I kind of not really pivoted, but I really focused on more of the value of what I was bringing to the table. So once I was able to do that, it's not really about, comparing or, making kind of the right situation for the client. It's kind of really marketing them to let them know this is what I can offer and this is what they can offer. And then you decide. And I allow that to be, because anyone can close a deal, if it's a part of a package. But what I wanted to do is build business relationships. So, regardless of paperwork and contracts and stuff, I want to make sure that you're loyal, and I want my services to make you loyal. And I did that in New York for about 7-8 years with certain clients. And it always has become like a great partnership for me. So that's how I run business.
Absolutely. A lot of corporate clients, before they were doing like extended stays, like Residence Inn was really popular, a couple other extended stay chains. But the difference is everything is kind of cookie cutter with them, as opposed to the business model. You're saying it's more about establishing the relationship with that business, with those executives, to kind of cater the experience to exactly what their needs are, as opposed to just, this is a one size fits all type of situation. And like you said, really asking them and, developing a relationship with them over time. And, also with corporate housing, you can kind of ask them what are the amenities that they want, and then you can go after a specific apartment. So can you tell me a little bit about your process for because obviously you have to have the units, and if you're not actually owning the building, can you tell us a little bit about the process of how you go after different apartment complexes to partner with them?
Yeah, so oftentimes it's a bit different because my main markets are Texas and New York. So both of those I just know like the back of my hand. So I'm always staying up to date with just new developments, who's going in them, what their structure is like, what their partnerships are like, which is why I also consult for real estate development companies. Like one that I'm doing here in Texas is Layers in Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is fantastic. They have 3 properties here, and they're getting into the corporate housing industry and trying to structure the properties that they own and furnish them and set them up. Well, that in lies me to have then relationships with other companies who are actually doing setups. So you have companies like Court who typically does most of the setups when it comes to corporate housings, but there's a lot of other entrepreneurs out there. So right now we're working with other providers like Nixon Living, they have their own design company who sets everything up, puts everything together for us. And then all we have to do is put in our branded stuff and kind of service them. So again, it's really very specific on the client's needs, and also getting more involved in, other entrepreneurs and small businesses and how to work with them with their kind of needs and what they would like to do and how they want to partner. So it all kind of varies on that basis. But I would say just keeping abreast of what they're getting into, so you kind of know what market or company that you really need to be structuring that particular client to, because all of them are going to be different. And it's all based on where they're developing. There's so many going on right now, which that's why I love being an entrepreneur right now, because I can kind of dip and dive into so many different aspects of how I can service my clients. So it's a fun time to really see what's going on and how to really represent their needs. So I would definitely say getting more kind of deep diving into what is required, and then not really give them the whole expectation of it, and then just kind of show up and show out. I've had a couple of those instances, and they've really enjoyed the experience of, I did not think that I would get all of this or have all of this, right at my front door and have this type of access. But, again, it's all about the education. And once they know that, you're able to put those plans together. And that's where, when they do the consultations with me, I can then talk to them about how we can develop it, what's going to be the best needs, who I go with and how they can service you and the quality of that. And then that's where the hospitality side can come in, and I can be more specific with that, while I have a team that I trust, which I call it like little Ninas, that, really can assist them on ground if I'm not there at that time.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, because you said you work with development companies. I know there's companies like Notel that are specifically geared to building buildings that are made for short-term rentals. So can you tell us a little bit about that process? And then also, you build kind of the units to a certain specification. So they're going to be different from if you're building regular apartments or condos. And then also there can be some kind of contention a little bit with the hotels and the, hospitality industry in general. There's been a lot of lobbying, a lot of fighting between Airbnb and the traditional hotel industry. And then also the cities, they want to make sure that they're getting the appropriate lodging tax and all the tourism taxes. So can you just say how that kind of process has been with developing properties specifically for short-term rentals?
Yeah, so they do get kind of how you say tax abatements. In New York, it's the 421 tax abatement riders. So they do have an agreement where they have to actually have a certain section of them where they can be furnished or they can be at a tax break. And so most of the time, and most of those buildings is 20%. And then typically, I would say more of a bigger corporate housing company, they would like to take all of it if they can. If not, or if they say that we'll give you 10%, or, you know, and then another company can have 10%, then we can kind of go in and share. But typically, most corporate housing companies, if they can take all of the 20%, they will. And then that way you can kind of really pick and choose the units that you want. Already kind of go in knowing that these are the target companies that I'm going to go after, and, you know, book those apartments. So they already know that they have income coming in before it's even, you know, finished. So that's kind of the structure with the tax abatements. How it's actually set up, it's also by coding. So when it comes to corporate housing in New York, you actually have to be coded to be a short-term apartment building if you want to stay for less than 30 days. Prime example is Lyric. Lyric was a property that actually used to be owned by Furnished Quarters, which was called Q&A, and then Lyric bought it, which was backed by Airbnb. So those units actually were coded as a hotel structure, and therefore they can actually have less than 30-day stays. However, these units are fully furnished apartments. Like, the 2 bedrooms have washer and dryers. They have full entire kitchens with like stoves and, you know, pots and pans and everything. Like, everything is literally set up how you would literally check into, say, an apartment that you just had like designed. So it's not a hotel structure, but it has all the concierge amenities. So you do have those structures as well. So it all, again, depends on where you want to be, because a lot of times, like, that one's all the way down in the financial district. If you have an assignment that's, say, in Harlem, you're not going to want to go all the way down to the financial district. Right. So maybe you want to stay at, you know, more of an extended stay. So again, that's where the relationships and the partners go in, so we know how to do the connections. If you're in Midtown or something like that, you know, Furnished Quarters or, you know, a Synergy would be great. But there's also some other smaller companies that are working with owners of these really great apartments and townhomes like Blue Ground. And I've worked with them for a little over a year now. I mean, they have some fantastic products. Plum Guide is another one. Sonder, they have plenty of shorter term stays units. So again, it's all really about figuring out which company actually matches the mold of that particular client and the needs of that project. And then you can then renegotiate the deal rather than just, you know, getting the sticker price, and you can kind of go from there. So it really all depends on, you know, the coding and what the clients need.
So for anybody that may be interested in delving into this industry, can you tell us a little bit of what's the difference? Like, it's a lot of work and there's a lot of hands-on with it. So obviously it's worth it. So can you tell us a little bit about what's the difference between like cash flow or revenue that you can expect from a regular apartment or unit versus with a corporate housing or service apartment type of structure?
You mean like just from our perspective or from the client perspective?
From, well, both, from your perspective. And then if you're a client, you know, obviously you can get a little bit of a discount from staying in like a regular extended stay, and you get a little bit more value.
Okay, so from the client perspective, you could definitely get a lot more discount. So if you're staying for 30 days in a hotel, just know that that rate's going to go up and down like a little roller coaster, because they price it off of a nightly rate. When it comes to a corporate housing, you can negotiate that particular contract for 30 days at a flat rate. So, I mean, you could save anywhere from 15 to 30%. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. And still have literally all of the luxuries of being able to have a fully furnished apartment. So instead of, 400 square feet, you're looking at 700 to 800 square feet in most cases for a 1-bedroom unit. It'll have a pull-out sofa probably. You'll have all of your, internet, Wi-Fi, cable, phone, everything access. You'll have a gym, and you're treated actually like you're a long-term resident. So in New York, like, you'll have the doorman, you'll have your packages there, you'll have your 24/7 customer service that will have, available access whenever you need them. Again, some of the people like Locale, which I do like, and I've stayed with them a few times. They've had it where everything is on your phone and you can just text someone. Like, love that. So it's still those services. So on that standpoint, when it comes to the money, it's no brainer. If you're staying for 30 days or longer, it is always going to be your best bet, because after a while, you're not going to want to sit in four walls, and you're going to want more space. You're going to want to not feel just treated like a guest that's just, staying there for a little bit. You're going to, want to really get in and chill. And the same concept with Texas as well. After a while, I mean, it's just a lot of space and land. You do not want to just be sitting up in a room all day. From our perspective on the business side, I mean, if you're renting an apartment unfurnished, say here in Texas for like, $1,500, definitely expect to get double your profit. So you're looking at anywhere from 50, if not 100% turnover from that. Once you furnished it, put everything in. So, I mean, there's business and structure financially to be made on both sides. You can definitely make a lot more money and still save your client money once you put everything in perspective. So, yeah.
So do you, with your business model, there's something that people that are doing mostly Airbnb, they call it rental arbitrage, where they rent the apartment for a year and then they gotta, work to fill the vacancy. You can't make that double the profit of what you're getting charged for the long-term rent. Do you do that? Or do you do more of a, once I get the client, then I'll go find the unit for them to stay in?
No, I always go off of the beat of my client's drum. So it's really off. It's based off of projects and what they need. So I don't want to go and find out, things. I educate myself on what's being done and who's developing it and where and how and why and all of that. And if it's important to introduce that to my clients, I will. But if not, I want to work off of what their needs are. And then I want to put that plan together, because it's like buying a whole bunch of, like, a refrigerator of groceries that you're not going to eat. So I don't want to waste time or money. I want it to make sense for the client, because my client is my top priority. I want it to look like I was listening to them and I wasn't just trying to close a deal.
Right.
So,
or try to put them in like a situation, I'm losing money here, so this is where I'm gonna put y'all. Right. I know, like, a couple months ago, we were talking about some of those companies that you mentioned, like Lyric and Sonder, and we were talking about they were already downsizing. They were already in a little bit of trouble even before this pandemic, because they had so many units that they had vacant and they weren't being able to fill the vacancy. So they had to, lay off people. So that's a good segue to, how has your business and how has the industry in general been affected now that we have this pandemic going on? It's a lot of uncertainty in the market.
Yeah. So, because we spoke earlier, I have admit it's been hard to see some of my colleagues who are really good in this industry to not be in this industry right now, figuring out, their pathway and what's kind of next. So that's been definitely disheartening. And it was about 3 months ago, to kind of see all of that. But it also I think kind of enlightened some of them to really figure out my next steps of really what I need to be doing. So it's sad, but it also had to happen. And change is good. I always say that, whether good or bad, change can sometimes hurt, but sometimes change is necessary. So I've definitely seen some people really, bloom and blossom and really try to figure out their best kind of aspect in this sector and how they can pivot. Because it's always important to know how you can fulfill your need and your passion and what and truly is your purpose. So I've really seen that from certain people who always, no matter what, can thrive. But I will say this industry, there's some involvement that had to happen in order for us to really see the necessary changes. So it's kind of out with the old and in with some new innovative structures of how we can cater to people. Prime example, I'm starting to notice in some industries, especially in the health sector, they are migrating people who can literally not necessarily travel through by plane, but is willing to actually just, travel in a car. One of my clients, she literally was just like, nope, I'm not losing this job because I'm not in Texas. I'm going to pack all of my bags. She packed her car up and she moved to Texas. And, so it's other ways of figuring out the travel industry and the hospitality industry of how they're going to make a way in order to not only just, keep going, but how to secure jobs for certain people and, how to keep this market going. It's down for right now, but I don't foresee that permanent. I do think 2021 is definitely going to be a year where people are going to travel, definitely a lot more. We're already antsy, but we're definitely going to be even more antsy to get that that business structure of travel back up. So I do see that coming back, but it's the requirements of being just not only clean, but how's the sanitation and how are, people actually moving, and the structure of, no hand contact and no physical contact and things of that nature. We'll have to start seeing those structures really change and innovate for people. So it's definitely taken a turn, but just to be honest, there are some people who are extremely thriving right now. I'm working with some of them and they're still doing really, really good in this industry. Yeah. So don't just give up all hope, because things are still churning. You just really have to find where you can be of value. So it's not necessarily about let's make a deal. It's really about what is it that I'm providing that looks like something that is superseding a need of really paying attention to what I want right now and how I can get through this particular pandemic time. So I think that there are some people who are doing it fantastically and, some people who are just restructuring. Lyric, I worked with them in Texas and New York. And even though they're not in Texas anymore, they do still have Lyric in the financial district in New York. I still work with them and they're still, coming back. So people are restructuring and making things come back. So it'll happen. I don't necessarily think the downturn was something everyone expected. Because no one expects hospitality, travel, or just this hotel industry to ever collapse. Like, who would ever think that? But a pandemic happened. So, you restructure, you learn, you make sure you have the right team there to keep it going, and you use your best partnerships. I've always known in this industry, it is small, so do not burn bridges. It's important. I had to learn this almost 3 years ago. When you need to take a break, because I didn't, and it definitely was really hard. So when things like this happens, and if you are not working right now and you need to just take that break, take a break. Just like get somewhere quiet and really just focus on you so that you can take care of other people. Like they say on a plane, in order to, help yourself, you have to help you. In order to help someone else, you have to help yourself. So put your mask on first and then help someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I personally think that there is going to be a big opportunity in this industry because for, the larger hotel chains, a lot of the reason that they have gotten, a little bit of shaky during this time is that they have so much overhead. So even if they are having customers come in, they still might not be able to cover all the, ancillary expenses that they have. With this model, it's more boutique and, it's catered specifically to what your client wants. So you don't you don't go after more or less than what your client wants. So you're going to get exactly what they are paying for. And then also with the way that the commercial real estate market is a little bit uncertain, a lot of developers, like you said, a lot of existing buildings are going to want to get a little bit more creative, and they might be more open now to doing something than a traditional just do a regular apartment, let me find year-long leases. They're going to want to do some hybrid business model of having a mix of short-term and long-term apartments. So you can bear through it right now. I think it's going to be a lot of opportunity moving forward in this industry.
I totally agree. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with being boutique. Some people are just like, I want to boom, I want to move too fast, too quick, too soon. And I think that's what some of the corporate housing providers kind of did. And now they need to, restructure and, take their time to get something, more settled, that's more solid. You have to build a proper foundation in order for you to withstand certain things like this. So that's why I do like my company, and that I'm not necessarily doing just the overhead of certain specific units. And that even though I am boutique because I choose to have quality business relationships with my clients, it allows me to globally assist them. Like one of my clients in New York, not only do I assist her throughout Chicago, DC, Atlanta, but I've also taken her to London and Ghana. So these are options, not necessarily if I was working for another company, would I been able to do those things for her. But through my company, I am. And that's through relationships, that's through understanding the market, that's how you understand what is going to be best for them, which is why I listen to my clients and then I do the research so they know that I'm only targeting what is best for them. So yeah, I think that it's really going to be interesting how people continue to move, because some people are like, nope, we ain't moving. And we're just going to sit here and ride this out until further notice. And some are like, no, we got to get back to work. Let's figure out some paths right now that we can do temporary so that we can supersede what's going on. So we'll be ready for next year. So it's all in the power of also, do you have the capital to do that? Which is extremely important for any entrepreneur or any service right now to make sure that, they're getting those PPP loans and doing all of those things so that, come time, you have the capital to be ready to pull the trigger on certain things that you do need to take care of when it comes to the clients.
And it's interesting you mentioned about funding, because I want to point out that besides, just being able to service those private companies, and then you also say you work with a lot of faith-based companies, the federal government also does a lot of work with corporate housing providers. So, they're more likely never going to go out of money. So especially if you're a women designated business and a minority owned business, there's a lot of set asides that people don't even know about in this specific industry that you can take advantage of those opportunities, because the government's always going to be relocating people, be building different sites, building new bases, whatever the case may be. So there's always opportunity with that.
Yeah, I would definitely say sam.gov is a great one for you to register so you can do those government contracts. A lot of people don't know those, but getting registered for that is amazing. Getting registered with your minority supplier, which I'm a minority-owned business. So, of course, I've been a supplier there for 2 years, working on my woman-owned one as we speak. It's always great to be a part of those groups. So, because you do not know what is out there until you are a part of those groups. There's tons of contracts and services that are required to be taken care of through a minority-owned business. So if you get involved, fill out the right paperwork, and just keep your connections going, you'll always be a reference to someone that will constantly keep referring. And so that's where the business partnerships come into. And also, there is a podcast meeting that I actually do on Wednesdays with Terrence McRae. It's called the Close the Deal Show. He's based out in California, and he actually puts together all of these entrepreneurs to network through different industries and how we can help each other kind of market and target and really kind of continue to grow our businesses and stuff. So it's really all about the connection. Just because it's on a Zoom call or a go-to meeting, unfortunately, and you can't really see everyone right now to travel and say hello. But there are other services and other people out there trying to really push the envelope for you. So the knowledge is there, but if you're not, sure, that's also where I have no problem with teaching people about it, because I've always been an advocate. If I can't really help you and I think it's a really good deal on my end, I'm going to take you directly to someone who I know and trust that can help you.
Absolutely. It's so important, like you said, about relationships. And that kind of brings me to the next part. So me and you met through the Corporate Housing Providers Association, which is a great organization. They're super hands-on, and they really advocate specifically for this industry with navigating everything that I mentioned before about the battle versus, Airbnb versus the different municipalities, and kind of how corporate housing fits in, because it's a little bit different. And then also banding people together, developing those relationships, because a lot of business is done from referrals rather than just going directly to a company and trying to develop that relationship from the top. A lot of it's referrals, as you mentioned. So I remember we went to the conference they had in Austin, Texas, right? A little bit before the world turned upside down.
Corporate Housing Association.
Yeah. So we met, before the world turned upside down. And what was funny is, when you go to a conference, especially I've, experienced this, anything that's commercial real estate or alternative real estate, you only see a few of us, or maybe one or two. So we was like instantly like, hey girl, we got to stick together.
Immediately. That's when Casey told me about you, and she was like, you have to find Jessica. And I was just like, who is Jessica? And she was just like, she's another Black woman. She's an entrepreneur. She has her own business in this industry. You have to meet her. I was like, okay, that's my people. And where is she?
Exactly. So yeah, we definitely got to stick together. So that brings me to the next point about, obviously there's not a lot of us in this industry. So how has that kind of shaped your experience?
That has taught me a lot, I have to admit. So because I started out in property management, I did notice that it was the white women that were in senior positions who did not want to see me like in their spot or come up, or because I'm always that girl of, maybe we could do this for the client. Or maybe we could, find a new idea for this. Like, I'm always in that section.
And they were like, nah, that's not the way we've done things all this time. Let's just stick to the, regular routine. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're like, stay in your lane and no. So I fought with that a lot, just kind of working my way up. When I got to New York, I didn't really find that as much. Especially because when I moved to New York, I transitioned over to Oakwood. I felt like even the guys in senior, positions, they were willing to kind of give you a shot. Not necessarily the first or second time. You still had to prove yourself, but there was opportunity there. And it was just like, if you give me a shot to prove myself, I can do it, because I really do enjoy what I do. Just let me prove it. Mm-hmm. And just so happened, once I got into an account management position, one of my first clients was Steve Harvey out in New York. And that's when he had moved his radio show there. And his whole team basically stayed with us for a very long time, but until I actually moved on. I don't know if they actually stayed there or not, but they kind of traveled with me through my career as I kind of, worked through Oakwood and other places. And, that was just, great. But from taking care of that client, they were referring me to others, like Anthony Anderson and Morris Chestnut and Terrence Howard and all of these other, great clients. I wasn't doing necessarily the entertainment industry at all, but it's like I treated them with a particular service that was outside of that box. And they saw that, and they saw how passionate I was about it. So they were like, okay, you come into New York, call Nina. You come into New York, make sure you hit up Nina if you need housing. So that's always been kind of my structure. I always like to keep the doors open. So I will definitely say there have been moments where you get to the point where you're just like, I know I'm qualified to do those jobs, but I'm getting overlooked. And it's not like I'm not putting my name in the pot, but it's just like, maybe someone knew someone, or maybe it just didn't, work for that niche. Or as most people know, in corporate housing, it can be a boys club. So you have to deal with that as well too. But and to each its own. The one thing I do like also about furnished quarters, it being a family owned business, is that it taught me a lot. I got to see how they were kind of nourishing the family to run the business. And I'm like, well, that's what I want to do for my family as well too. Why would I not learn from that? So not only did I do some really great deals with them, but I was able to learn a structure of business that I had not really envisioned or paid attention to before. So I took that, and also that's also a lot of great information that inspired me of how I wanted to run my own company. And it is what you make it. It is, I'm not going to say it's not lonely, because when you do walk into those rooms and you do only see lighter pigmentations, it's not fun. It's not easy, but it is nice to know that there is another Jessica in the room sometimes. It is nice to know that we're coming, and you can, you do want to be there to kind of lend a helping hand when you see someone of color. And be like, girl, you here. Yay.
Yeah.
So it's,
No, I was going to just say it's so important that, we stick together and lift each other up, because there's rarely, unfortunately, you can go in a lot of different rooms and you be the only one. So it's so important to lift other people that look like you up, that have a similar background and experience as you. And it's just proven. I'm glad that, the country is facing in this kind of reckoning right now, where we're having these type of conversations, and people of that lighter complexion persuasion are having these type of conversations, because it's been proven, like through empirical studies, that when you have more diversity, you have different perspectives, you add things to the bottom line. Like you were just saying that whole story about your company, and you are the one that kind of brought in this whole new customer pool of all these top entertainers that they may not have gotten if they didn't have you on the team. So diversity is good for the bottom line. And that's, that's what people care about these days, but that's, it helps. So
yeah, but I don't want just the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I definitely, it's great to see, a letter go out. It's great to see, on Instagram, and you have, your Black page out, your blackout page. It is great to say you stand for a certain movement and all of that. My whole thing is, I really want to see action. And it's not necessarily saying that I need you to hire a black person or someone of color in order to be in a certain position just because they're Black. I need you to pay attention to the other people that actually work for you, that are actually incredible and they can do the job. Maybe you should not pass them by, because I've had those experiences over and over and over again. And I'm like, you're just passing me by. I don't necessarily want to go there, because it's so taboo back in the day to not have those conversations, especially when you're, climbing the ladder of corporate America. So you don't want to say, but you're like, now, I can do that better, but I'm going to let you pass. So, cause I got to keep my job, so I want to see better. I want to see improvement of not just the acknowledgement, but understanding that not only conversation needs to be had, but it needs to be heard in a way that you're not just saying, oh, we're listening. And then you're like Starbucks, send out a letter that's saying you can't wear certain t-shirts. And it's like, come on, like you can't say one thing in public and then do something, different behind their backs. Now, if your company is run at a certain structure and it is what it is, and that's how you want to do it, that's fine. You just, you are going to have to literally implement this structure and get bought out or get put out. So I don't think that there's going to be a time where you can just be like, nope, this is what we're doing and that's it. Like, change is inevitable. It has to happen. So I want to see action. And it doesn't even also have to be within the structure of your company. Who's your suppliers? You know, are they people of color? Because there's tons of other people that you can go to for your furniture, for your technology, for your marketing, for your design development. There are so many other structures out there of companies that you can just partner with to show your appreciation and acknowledgement. So there's other ways that you can cross that platform and really, you know, be an actual supportive company to this infrastructure that is overdue to have happened. I love my industry, but I definitely think that there needs to be more to just not the conversation, but to the actions that they take in order to kind of move in the right direction.
That's definitely a word, because another thing that I keep seeing from these companies is that they're donating money to some, you know, charity that's for something about Black people. And it's like, that's nice, but it's like a one-time thing. Like, we want to see some changes in the structure, like you said, of your suppliers, your vendors. We want to ultimately see Black people in the rooms where the decisions are being made, have that, you know, C-suite position to have those kind of changes come from the top down and be a part of the conversation of, you know, so it's not like you said with Starbucks, you're not saying some kind of tone deaf statement about, yeah, we're for Black people, but you can't wear a Black Lives Matter shirt to work or something. So,
yeah, I mean, think about it. You don't want to just feel as though this is only a race. No, it's a marathon. It's going to take time. So that's why I say I'm not expecting a handout. I want actual improvements in a way that actually looks like it's being improved because you saw that the change was needed. So I want us as Black people to also come together. We have so many resources that we have within ourselves that we can be building. So it will come to a point where it's like, wait a minute, we need to partner with you anyway, because like, look at what you've built. Of course, same thing with Airbnb and all of these other people. When you become a disruptor, you don't have a choice. It's not a, like, we can beat this. No, you have to join this. So that's why I think it's extremely vital to make sure that we improve our resources to each other so that we can actually promote and sponsor ourselves in a way that actually makes sense for this movement.
Absolutely. And you touched on before about family-owned businesses, and another reason that they've kind of, other people in another persuasion have been able to generate this kind of head start of us is because of, nepotism. They promote their family and they keep going down the line, but ultimately it started out because they are able to put their wealth together to create more wealth. And I think in our community, we've been kind of hesitant. We've, been distrustful about each other for whatever reason. But now I think, we're not talking about money in general in our families as we're growing up. Like, talking about money, owning property, owning businesses is not the norm in our culture. And I feel like that's the wave that's kind of changing right before our eyes now. Really, people are opening their eyes and seeing that, okay, instead of just having a job, I need to have a business. I need to have multiple streams of income. We need to put our money together to be able to buy assets that will generate us money and that we can pass on for generations. So,
most people are not taught like that. I mean, I wasn't taught to be an entrepreneur. I didn't grow up around entrepreneurs. So when people were like, I'm leaving this, nice little comfortable 6-figure corporate jobs and, I'm going to do this on my own. Everyone was like, Nina, you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm fine now. I feel like I'm actually coming into my own. Mm-hmm. And because I was brought up, you go to school, you go to college. After you go to college, you get a good job. And, then you make your money and, you do all of these things. But it got to the point where I was just like, if I remove all of these materialistic financial things, who am I as a person? You know, what does that look like so I can represent it to my clients so they know? So, you know, old corporate Nina, she would not be on a podcast with like no makeup. Like she would be all done up and, you know, whatever. You know, new Nina, she's like, I'm good. I'm beautiful without that. I know how to represent my people, and I want to be a resource that doesn't need a facade or live in a box anymore. And so that was one thing, what's his name? Dr. Michael Roberts would say, who is a Black billionaire. He'd go to conferences and he'd be in a room and he would, you know, poll the audience and be like, raise your hand if you think outside of the box. And of course, tons of hands would go up. And he'd be like, I need to slap all of your hands. Because he was just like, if you're thinking outside of the box, then that means you live in a box. And so that's the whole concept. So you really do have to kind of restructure your mind in order to really make the proper changes that you can career-wise with your clients, with your personal life, with your health, and all of these other things. Because when I met you at Chippa, I mean, it was like a reunion to me in Austin. And those people were like, Nina, is that you? And I'm like, yes. And to talk to them, they were just like, you look and feel like you're in your zone, like you're in with what you want to do and who you want to be. And that was the point. I needed to get to the point where I got completely comfortable with myself of what exactly I wanted to be so I could help my clients.
It's a different glow when you're the boss and you're not having to fit into, like you said, a box or a certain stereotype. A lot of people that are from our culture, we're going into workplaces and we have to kind of be, you know, like a second self. Like you have to talk a certain way. You have to feel like you have to wear your hair a certain way, dress a certain way. So when you're the boss, you're the one that's dictating whatever culture. You can do whatever you want to do. And it's like, if you don't want to do business with me because of this, then you can just move on.
Yep. Like what Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. So it is what it is. So,
yep. So, and then you can, you know, when you're the boss, you can dictate who you want to work with and who you don't want to deal with at all. So definitely a word for everybody listening, a gem. So appreciate that. Okay, so I want to just wrap it up here and go to the last segment, which is our Fabulous Four, which is 4 questions that I ask all of the guests. So just answer from the top of your head, anything comes to mind. The first question is, what is your favorite book about real estate?
I would have to say my favorite book right now, because I've been reading a lot lately, is The Secret to Breaking the B.R.O.K.E Code by Constance Carter. That's a really good one. She is a just top real estate, well, actually she's a real estate broker. And she has an extremely successful real estate firm, and she's doing some really great, incredible things. But she has a few books, but the one that I just recently read was Breaking the B.R.O.K.E Code. That one is really good by Constance Carter. So I would say that one. And also another book that I like for the 3rd time I just read again is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. You have to restructure your mindset in order to fundamentally know how to really change your aspect on money and things. And I think that you have to start with your mindset first before you learn a different structure of real estate development, wealth, and investments. So you change your mind, you can change your future.
Amen. I've been having a lot of conversations with family and friends and just seeing on social media. Like I said, it's been a big shift now with the pandemic. Everybody is being forced to sit down without distractions and really kind of think about, you know, what's important moving forward. Before we were caught up in all these material things and distractions about looking a certain way and, you know, putting on a certain image to people. And then, like you said, it's really important about you want to have those different streams of income. You want to own your own business. You want to do this and that and be an entrepreneur. But it first starts with your mindset, because it's a fundamental shift from being an employee being a renter, a tenant, being a consumer in general, to being a boss, being the owner, being the person in charge, and, you know, just depending on yourself for your own income. So most important thing anybody can catch is the mindset is most important. You got to get your mind right before you make this shift in, you know,
Absolutely.
being
I
your own
think
boss.
that a lot of people just don't realize, especially in the Black community, how important our mental health is. And there are so many resources out there that we can use as tools for help, because a lot of times, you know, we're brought up to really hone in our emotions and, you know, not really have that that opinion and thought. And so as adults, we kind of tend to do that in different structures that we're not seeing. But, you know, like for a couple of years now, through therapy, that has also taught me how important it is to understand my own voice and what that is and what that feels like. So again, it's all a part of your mindset and how you build that. You know, you go to the doctor for everything else. So why would you not go to the doctor to take care of your mind? That's still a muscle that you need to really build and maintain. So it's a good gift to know exactly where you sit and lie. Because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer in a Christian and I love the Lord. So he don't care about how expensive that roof over my head is. He doesn't necessarily care about my bank account. He wants to know how I served. And that is my whole purpose of what I do in this industry and how I really put myself out there in my business. I want to serve and I want to be of value so that someone can actually be grateful for what I'm doing for them. So that's the purpose at the end of the day.
And that's the most major key. Like, instead of chasing money, when you aim to serve and to provide value to people, the money will kind of come, you know, on its own. So have that servant mentality. Yeah. And when you do right by people, you know, karma comes around to you. So you're doing right by people, you're giving a product or a service that's of good quality. Your reputation and everything is going to kind of speak for itself, and people are going to gravitate to you, and then the money's going to come.
Amen.
All right, cool. So the second question is, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your younger self just starting out in this industry?
I would say be patient with myself. A lot of things that I've just recently learned in my life, it took me thus far to get here. I'm 40 years old. And, you know, at 20 and 30, I still feel like I was such a babe in really trying to figure out and understand who I was, and learn and travel. So I would definitely say travel a lot. Don't feel bad if you don't do what is required and what you see around everyone else, to just be more patient and take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Like, really enjoy being really selfish with yourself when you're younger. I don't really think I ever thought that was important or focused enough on that. But the older I've gotten, it has definitely occurred to me that that's not a want, that's a need. And I would say finally on that, I've been listening to the Power podcasts that Brother Bedford and Dr. George C. Fraser, he's like the Martin Luther King of our generation. It's like decades of just amazing experience that this man has done for our Black community. But Dr. George C. Fraser, he said he looked at an analysis that stated that the best years of your life don't start until you're in your 50s. So I'm like, I'm 40, so I'm good.
And Napoleon Hill says that in Think and Grow Rich. He said your wealth and your, life and living how you really want to starts at 40. So
that's right. So all of this time where I'm just like, oh my God, I haven't done this and I haven't done that. And oh my God, everyone's done, all of that. I'm like, all of that just, it literally went away a few years ago. So be patient with yourself, take care of yourself, work on your mindset, and travel. I would say that.
Awesome advice. Awesome. All right. So the third question is, what is a topic that you personally want to learn more about in regards to real estate?
What we're developing as Black people. I am really looking into a lot of young investors who are really growing our communities. Well, I would say neighborhoods, because we actually don't have any communities anymore. but are turning those neighborhoods into communities. So really working with them and knowing how my niche market can be a supplement to them, and how I can work and connect with them and throughout other industries like design and technology, and be more of a service to real estate developers. So getting into more of that and reading about more of that, and doing a lot more networking on that.
Yeah, as I've been following, different people on social media, I see there's a lot more young people of color that are really throwing this buy back the block movement and are really trying to reinvest in our communities, which is important because, people have been gentrifying us for so long and pushing us out, and it increases the value. So we need to kind of reverse that and take back the value in our own neighborhoods and build wealth that way.
Yeah, in the area that I bought my townhome, which is, they call it Midtown now, because of course it's regentrified, but it's third ward, and it's third ward in Houston. So the fact that not only is the city doing so much to improve third ward and other neighborhoods around there now, like fourth and fifth ward, the development there, the structure is there. So to be a part of that is really nice, and to kind of see what they're doing and the services that they're implementing in some of these incredible Black-owned businesses, just kind of being a tool and a service to them throughout my clients as well. So it's all about giving. I just want to give back as much as I possibly can and be a tool of knowledge so that, they can keep thriving. Because when we all thrive and serve, like, we can all break bread. Because what did Tyler Perry say? If they don't want you at their table, build your own table. So I want to make sure that we get our own table, we sit in our own chairs, and our clients should actually understand that their exec team looks like them, because most global companies, their clients are worldwide. So they're Asian, they're Indian, they're, Filipino, they're South American, they're, Black and African, and, from all of these other walks of life. We need to expose ourselves to that culture and embrace it, and be there to serve in that manner. So I think that structure is definitely coming. I'm excited about that.
Amen, girl. You're dropping so many gems. You're giving us a sermon in here today. I appreciate it. So the last question, it's not really a question, but can you please shout out one other woman that's doing something amazing right now in regards to real estate?
Oh, there's so many. But the one that recently we've been in talks, and we've been just really embracing our love and giving encouragement around each other, I would say is Trika John Baptiste. She is in the real estate commercial development industry. She's an entrepreneur, beautiful Black woman. She has been in this game for quite some time, and she knows how to work a room in corporate America and really know how to get things done at that level. So she's absolutely awesome. Trika John Baptiste, I love you. She's absolutely amazing and doing some really great things in real estate.
Is she in a particular market?
I know that she does mostly East Coast, but I met her through New York. So
okay, awesome. Lot of Black people been doing big things in New York. So in Houston and DC, shout out to all those places. So yes. We're just trying to take over everywhere in general. So cool.
Yeah, we're continuing our brands. We're building.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this. This was a great conversation, super informative, super good for the soul. And I hope a lot of people, got motivated and inspired by it. So I really appreciate your time with this.
Thank you for having me. This is an absolutely great platform. I think that what you are doing in this particular time for women of color is absolutely amazing. And I think all of us need to know about real estate and the different types of real estate. So you're doing a value service. So I commend you and I salute you. And of course, nothing but more success and love.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hearing that from you is awesome. So if people want to get in touch with you, ask questions, or do business with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me directly. My website is thesuitefaith.com. So TheSuiteFaith.com. Set up a consultation or give me a call directly, 214-707-6268. You can also find me on social media, Sweet Faith Housing on Instagram and The Sweet Faith on Facebook.
All right, cool. And do you have any projects or events, any information you want to leave people with?
So there's a lot of different things that I'm working on with different companies. So stay tuned. That'll definitely be posted on the website soon. But it is also about highlighting other businesses that are growing and coming up and pivoting in this particular market. So I'm going to be exposing more of that stuff. As far as conferences and stuff like that, I only have one schedule for the fall that I know for sure. I hope that doesn't get canceled. And that's the Power Networking Conference that's actually being hosted in Houston in October, who is with Dr. George C. Fraser and his whole crew and team that are just powerhouses. So if anyone is in the Houston area or around that area where they can drive and come, it's from October 14th through the 17th. I would definitely encourage anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur or be in a room of multimillionaires and billionaires who have done it, been there, and want to actually help these small businesses grow and do anything that they can to help them promote and guide and teach them. I would encourage anybody to register. And if you also want some information of how to get a discount, please reach out to me and I can let you know.
Okay, cool. I'm going to get the information from you if people want to register. And I guess if they want to get the secret discount from you, reach out to her directly. We'll put all her contact information in the show notes and the comments on YouTube. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation. I'm, super glad that you shared your time and knowledge with us. So again, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, cool. Well, signing off now. Again, this is Jessica Washington. This was another episode of the Pretty Girls Love Real Estate podcast, and see you all next week.